we're looking to answer the question around whether or not women of color could get elected and run at the same rates as our counterparts.
Not in Kalamazoo.
And research was appalling. You can actually find this research still on wholeads.us. I hope that you check it out. If you are a political nerd like me, you're about to spend all night inside of this data. In a mapping of nearly 50,000 electoral seats across the country, 50,000 opportunities to lead communities, 50,000 jobs that are looking for incredible applicants that care about the people and want to lead on public policy. 50,000 electoral seats up every single year. And in that mapping of those 50,000 seats, we found that 90% of people running for office unelected identify as white, and 65% of people running for office, which would mean that if we were in the big, beautiful ballroom that I'm at least envisioning in my mind, with you all smiling in your beautiful evening wear.
Hold on, y'all. Trying to get it.
If we were in a room of 100 people, what would be 90 out of 100 elected leaders were white? And that 4 of the 100 would identify as women of color. Huge, glaring disparities in the candidates that were running and the candidates that were elected. And upon seeing this data, upon digesting it and really thinking about what it was trying to tell us, what the mandate was to respond to it, it was really clear that the data wasn't just about the identifying makeup of our elected leadership and needing to fight for more women of color to run, but it was also begging a really important question. What is keeping women of color from running for office? And most importantly, what is keeping us from winning? Over that next year, we engaged in answering those questions. We did interviews and research and qualitative examples of the way that women of color across the country, when engaging in running for office, were treated. And what came up more than anything were the structural barriers. Structural barrier keepers in our community that says who can run and who can't.
Hello.
Structural barriers that include the amount of money needed in order to run for office.
Personal for me, so.
Election days as a day that many times working women of color cannot either prioritize or take off. The campaign schedule. The fact that most people who are running for office are able to take off time from work, can self-fund their salary while they run for office, and structural barriers like redistricting and the gerrymandering process that mean that many women of color who want to run for office are running against 20, 30, and 40-year incumbents who have created a mapping that means that our voters are not experiencing consistent voter engagement. And so I took this data and I wanted to keep digging deep. I committed myself to working with the baddest, most progressive, most visionary Black women that I could find in service of continuing this experiment. If structural barriers were keeping women of color and mainly Black women from running for office, look like, and how could the formulas of our campaigns be in service of that unrigging? My second client ever was Stacey Abrams in 2015. She called me one day as I was driving back. I'd managed one of my best friend's campaigns for city council in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Latasha Mays. And I was driving back up on the freeway to my home and I get a call from Stacey. Why did I just hear that you had started your own firm from someone else? And I said, I was getting to it. I've been asking myself these important questions and creating a path forward to engage deeply. She said, well, I need you. Let's build something together real in Georgia. And so together we worked to recruit, engage, and train Black and Brown campaign managers across the South. We worked to build voter engagement programs in Georgia. And when she ran for governor, I became her deputy campaign manager and chief of staff to build one of the largest gubernatorial campaigns in the country, and for her to become the first Black woman gubernatorial nominee. What the Stacey Abrams campaign taught me was this of the last 5 years for me, that a visionary Black woman leader is good, but it's still not enough. In Georgia, what we needed to do was to create a multi-tactical, multi-front campaign that it could engage not only in the structural work that was needed, but could ignite and inspire people to believe that change was possible. We built a campaign that was full of field organizers in every single part of the state. We didn't just leave that up to the presidential campaigns or the more well-funded infrastructure. We said that we want to talk to voters every single day over the next year and a half. We blanketed the state with organizers, even in the rural areas, leaving no voter unturned. We built a voter protection operation that had nearly 100 voter protection lawyers to protect the rights of people to vote in Georgia. We created a dynamic and culturally exciting campaign that included not only a bus tour, but engaging DJs and artists and musicians who created murals in the state of Georgia and invited their families into Stacey's progressive vision for the state. Election night, when we knew that there had been large-scale voter suppression, it wasn't just the numbers that told us that. The movement that we built in Georgia was a coalition, a multiracial, intergenerational, across-class coalition of people that didn't just see Stacey on the ballot, they saw themselves. And so as that structural rigging that I talked about earlier tried to suck her into this black hole, we had built a movement that pulled her back out, that asked her not to concede, that told her that we made a commitment to telling the story of Georgians and telling the story of the way that this democracy still has to grow in favor of the people that we want to participate. And so she didn't concede, not for herself, but for this experiment, for this thesis, for the ability to say that we fought to the very last moment. The Stacey Abrams campaign, for me, was really an example of how far we still have to go. Over the next year, I would grieve that campaign a lot. It was triumphant in that we just rose from the ashes like a phoenix, and that the non-concession was enough. But the non-concession itself was enough. And I have to tell you that it isn't. That for me, millions of people still see that as an example of non-participation, as an example of the mistrust of our election systems and our government. And for me, that brings me to my next example of my experimentation and questions that I've been asking over the last 5 years. And that's the question of whether or not elections can be justice work. Is electoral justice possible in a country where so many of us are prevented from participation and are repeatedly given messages and visuals of the ways in which our leadership won't be acknowledged, accepted, or engaged? In 2017, I worked with the Movement for Black Lives to build the Electoral Justice Project to answer this question. The Movement for Black Lives is an ecosystem of nearly 150 Black organizations that were born into collaboration and a united front through the Ferguson Uprising and the murder of Trayvon Martin, but are more than a protest movement, although that is a central and important tactic of Black movement. It's also a multi-tactical, grounded movement that digs deep into public policy, that digs deep into how we build organizers through long-term, how we engage in political education to get to solutions, and how we get to accountability and restoration for Black people in this country. We interviewed every single organization of the Movement for Black Lives. And we said, okay, so seems like the national media says that Black movement hates elections, that there isn't a place for protest, to talk about protests and elections at the same time. Is that true? And over and over and over again, people said, no, that's not true. We just want to do it on our own terms. We want to talk about electoral work based on our long-term vision for creating change. We don't just want to be a vendor for the national to the polls. We want to have a dialogue. We want to have an alternative to the way that electoral work can feel extractive and symbolic. We want to engage in structural change. We want to be able to talk specifically about race and about the way that poverty and homelessness and police violence and intracommunal violence all is working to prevent the meaningful lives of Black people. We want to do it all. And we don't want to just do the polite version. So I was like, okay, all right, we can do this. We can do this. And over the last 3 years, we've been building an electoral strategy for Black movement. I've been really, really, really proud that the answer to my big question, is there a meaningful place for Black movement and electoral strategy? Is there a meaningful bridge where we don't have to take off one hat of the way that we are engaged in our community and surviving in order to be seen as politically viable or palatable? Is there a place where we could do both? Where people can feel both transformation is possible while also tilling the soil. And I can say to you all that 5 years later, the answer is yes. Yes, electoral justice is possible. It is possible to change the map that I helped to understand more clearly. And over the last 5 years, and in particular due to the 2018 midterm elections, the women of color representation of leadership in this country grew by 30%. It's still not enough. There are still more millionaires in Congress than there are women. But we are growing every single year. And I know that you feel that too. I'm also proud to say that the conversation that Stacey Abrams ignited meant that she was the State of the Union response of last year and on the short list to become Vice President of the United States. And even more importantly, we are now engaging in an honest, authentic, and righteously mad conversation about voter suppression, one that implicates all of us. It isn't just on Black voters. It's on all of us to protect. And lastly, in the pursuit of electoral justice, since the Ferguson uprisings of 2014 and contentious, agitational, and really delicious community building with each other, the movement for Black Lives has taken on electoral work in a big way. Next Friday, we will offer the world a Black National Convention that will engage nearly 4 million Black voters across the country in an affirmative vision for Black lives, where we will lay out an agenda of our North Star, as well as our strategy for engaging in the 2020 election cycle. And so I'll leave you all with this. Success is not always this perfect victory where we all get to dance and sing in the streets, although there will be a lot of those, and I think there are many more to come. Success to me in answering all of our questions is whether we are awakening to the needs of our communities, each other, and the structural inequities that prevent us from that transformation. Success isn't just inching forward, but it's about naming the truth. The more people who tell the truth every day about the reality of our lives, the better. In 2014, it wasn't politically palatable to say Black Lives Matter. And in 2020, nearly every single elected leader on the progressive side will say Black Lives Matter and are engaging in a conversation about racial justice in this country that we've never seen. And so what is politically possible is no longer a question that those people over there get to say. Mass movements, our collective awakening, our responsibility to each other, and the structural exposing that we're witnessing right now, that is what tells us what's politically possible. That is what tells us what is needed. Taking care of our people, making sure that people stay not just alive, but thriving. When we run for office, when we lead where we are, whether that's within our organizations, within our families, in our communities, in our friend group, when we vote, when we serve in mass movement, when we protest, when we set a boundary, when we say no, when we defend other people, not because it is good for us, but because it's the right thing to do. Sexual harassment. I believe that in my lifetime, I am going to experience that level of freedom. That means that people won't harm me because of the color of my skin. I believe that I'll get to kiss my girlfriend in public and not worry about violence. I believe that my children will have an opportunity to be educated in the best schools, no matter their zip code. I believe that that's true. I believe that our people don't have to be in cages inside of a prison system that is unbelievably violent and inequitable. I believe that every single solution to all of our problems is right here. And I believe that when people inside of our communities are asking to not just survive but thrive, that's a public policy question that can help us to get way closer to liberation in our lifetime and that collective responsibility that makes everything better. So I believe, and I hope that you do too, we have a lot of work to do. But I hope in this moment that feels sometimes scarce, like the walls are closing in on us, like there isn't enough good news, that you hear me say this. The good news is right here. The good news is that we woke up today, that we still have a chance for transformation, that there are people not just waiting for us, but already moving, that right now someone is organizing in their communities and running for office, that someone right now is begging us to pay attention to get to the solution that will change their life. That's the abundance that we need. And all of us have to do is clear our path to get to each other. And the more we clear our paths, the more together that we will be. And so I invite you not only into that work, but to see it all around. And with that, I just want to say thank you again for everything that you're already doing, for the way that YWCA has continued to show up in our communities to do the most good and to shed a light on racial inequality. And I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone has. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamal Razvi. I'm the Health Equity Program Manager here at the YWCA Kalamazoo. Jessica, thank you so much for a moving keynote. You got all of us believing along with you. Questions, I have some great questions from the chat.
Awesome.
So first question, Jessica, for those women who you supported during your electoral campaigns, how did you all overcome the losses? It is so easy as a woman to look internally at why you personally failed, what you didn't do enough of to appease others, and how your physical appearance impacts the outcome of the election. How did you overcome these challenges and the disappointment that followed immediately thereafter? We're so critical of ourselves as women that I can't imagine what set of unique challenges you face to remain resilient.
Samantha, I love this question. That was from, okay, awesome. And thank you, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for the work that you've done to make this event happen. Oh my gosh, no one has ever asked me this question before. And it is actually, I think, a yearly one for me. I actually just had a mentee and someone that I love very much lose a race on Tuesday by 400 votes in Florida for State House. And in refreshing the Board of Elections page, I had this moment where I was just imagining her face. And it's a face that I've seen like 100 times, where you gave it your all and you didn't get picked, you didn't get chosen. And that is how it feels to raise your hand and to put your name on a ballot. It's a really courageous thing to do. And so what I told her is what I often tell others, which is that what you did is still success. You still organized. You had all of these people vote, and thousands of people vote for you who either hadn't seen themselves in their system, and that your job is to run again. That's like folks in dominant political power, they don't lick their wounds for too long. They keep intricately planning to gain power. And so it's our job to find ways to uplift leaders who aren't officially elected and to dust ourselves off and run again. And I can say that in the last decade, that more and more of the women candidates that I'm working with see that as the challenge, that their first time isn't the last time, that it's an opportunity to get it right again. And that there's a lot of organizing that can happen after election day, even if you fall short, to hold your opponent accountable and to do the work of the visioning, from your campaign. But then I'm going to answer this question for myself as well, because I take being in community with you all really serious, and so I want to be honest, which is that every loss feels horrible, every single one. And especially after, I would say, the Stacey loss, I really was like, is this what I'm doing? I'm just on a treadmill of social change where you're like walking and then you get off of it. And so I literally journaled every single day. What's my best and highest use? What is my best and highest use? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? If this is what I'm, but if there's something else for me, please show me. And over that next year, I worked with the She the People campaign to create the only presidential campaign for women of color. And that was about 6 months after Stacey lost. And I remember being backstage as this incredibly diverse group of presidential candidates, and all of these women of color asked them questions. And I was like, okay, journal, I see what you were doing. I'm in my best and highest use. I should recommit here. And so I just want to say, like, that questioning actually, and that grieving and that mourning and that feeling of just being in kind of a surrender, like that's actually the growth part. And so I always allow that to change me and shift me and to move me to the next step. So hopefully that lands with some folks as well.
Thank you for that encouragement. Our next question, how do you help women heal who have been hurt and mistreated in this very system that you're speaking about? Can you address this from the perspective that the majority see nothing wrong with the structure and then want or expect you to support them past the primaries as though all is well for community and party sake?
Dang, y'all are asking questions on us. I love this question. One, as I shifted from working inside of a big organization, I had a lot of resources and wanted to be doing the right thing for sure, into a place just for me to experiment and to till the soil and to learn just for myself and just for Black people in movement. I started to realize how much I focused on what other people didn't know or didn't agree with me on, or who weren't ready for me. I started to realize how much I focused on that the years before 3-point strategies. That I so desperately wanted people to tell me that my life mattered. I so desperately wanted people to affirm that what I was experiencing was real. And the moment that I every single day was talking to Black women, every single phone call, every single meeting were Black women, I started to heal myself through seeing that affirmation all of the time. And what that did was it started to shift my focus, not on the people who weren't with me, but on the people who are with me right now. And so I would say, Davida, that there are going to be a lot of people that either don't like you or disagree, and a lot of people that really love you and are conspiring for your success. And that focusing there has been a place of healing for me and for others. And one of the reasons why I've continued to build 3-point strategies, we've become a staff of 13 over the last 5 years. We work every single day as campaign managers for Black movement and for Black women, is to find those spaces of homeness for you. To find a political home, whether it is 5 people that you are building with and rocking with and moving with, or if it's a huge organization of 100 where you have a rightful place, but to find that home for yourself. And then speak to them every time you speak. Let that be your grounding every time you have to do something courageous. And that in itself can be a healing and strengthening in order to still do the work of change. And I just want to acknowledge that how difficult it is. Daily discrimination and inequity, racism, just, etc. And to still have people question your tactics, still have people question why you're angry, still have people question what. And so for everyone, and all of us are implicated in this, all of us, that when someone tells you what they need to survive, if someone says the police are killing me and I don't want to die, or if I have childbirth in a hospital, there is a chance that I will not survive. That scares me. Or I am worried about what it means to be in a community where men are not held accountable for their sexual abuse of women. That is met not with I don't know, that sounds like a lie. Or that, what are you going to do about that? Or is that a real? Are you sure? That is the re-traumatizing and the isolating experience that so many of us feel in movement, in our organizations, in our communities. And that by simply acknowledging, holding space for curiosity to learn, by doing your own investigation so that you can meet those conversations with the love and the care that people who are experiencing violence and inequity deserve. Like, that is our everyday work. That is our everyday work that we can all find meaning and purpose inside of. I hope that met the question. I'm gonna probably think about that all night. Thank you for asking it.
That's great. I have another question here. How do you encourage women of color who are invested in community but have a soured perspective about politics to put themselves in that process to take that community level change to a deeper level? There are so many women who don't believe that politics is for them or don't want to be a part of the sometimes messy nature of politics that could totally rock some of the positions locally and at the state level.
So the first thing is I always acknowledge that whatever they're like, what that experience, that like feeling that it's messy, that it can be mean, that it can be undermining, that it can be limited, like that's all true. That is true. And that when you build a campaign, especially when you build a people power campaign in your community, that what it does completely shifts the experience. Not about all of the ways that you want to be building power and wheeling and dealing, but it actually gives you a chance to be in dialogue every single day with your community. And like, my like joy as I say that is that's the part I'm addicted to, is like that campaigns, they force you to really know what people who live around you believe. It really forces you not to make assumptions about people, but to know. And so what I would say, so those very honest and righteous women of color who've invested but don't want to engage deeply in politics or don't want to run for office, is to, one, support their leadership in other ways right now, to create space for them to be given credit for the level of work that they're doing, to be seen as a leader, to be given deference and respect and resources, in that experience, demonstrating that there can be a coalition that protects them, that uplifts their work, that also is an organizing tactic for them to see that there's another way to do politics. And then I would also say that if someone says no, for very real reasons, that you should consider that why. Is because there's someone in their family, there's something that they feel like they can't overcome. A lot of the work that we do at 3 Point Strategies is taking that shame of difference that we are so often assigned of being different, of talking a certain way, of walking a certain way, of caring about a certain people. We take that and we create a strategy around it. And so for as you listen to what they're saying to you, like what's really behind it? Is it that they had a house that was foreclosed on and they're worried that people will find out? There's a way to talk about that brings in even more people. Is it that they have a trans child that they want to protect and they're worried that people will talk about their child in a specific way? There's a way to protect them and demonstrate that there's another way. And so there's organizing work here for all of us to do, not just to say, hey, it's you, come on, but to really be in dialogue about their leadership, about their fears, and creating a path forward so that they take your planted seed and they're watering it every day. And then I also lead several training programs. So I would just say too is I lead a Black campaign school every year. And then we also train across the country women of color candidates, et cetera. So I would also, if you go to our website and we have a newsletter and you will be opportunities, we'd love for you to share it with your friend as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you for handling these questions, and thank you for our participants for those amazing questions. Jessica, you handled these well. So that concludes our Q&A session. But speaking of thank yous, I'm going to be handing us over to Heather for our thank yous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Oh my goodness, Jessica, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And I believe in you, as I'm sure all of these folks do too. What an incredible way to spend a Friday evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Heather Haig. I'm the board chairwoman of the YWCA Kalamazoo. On behalf of the YWCA Kalamazoo, I'd like to spend a few quick moments thanking the individuals and the organizations that made Women's Equality Day 2020 possible. We want to thank all of our hosts, Barbara Dirks and Chris Kuth, Carl Brown, Caroline Ham, Christine Morris, Community Services Charity, Dora Mann, Doreen Gardner, Elizabeth Upjohn Mason, Fran Eckenrode, Hope Through Navigation, Housing Resources, Inc., Julie Rogers, Kalamazoo Community Foundation, Kalamazoo Friends Meeting, Quakers, Kalamazoo Promise, Ladies Library, Meredith Place, Stephanie Moore, Stryker, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Kalamazoo chapter of the Links Incorporated. And our event sponsor, Stacy Caudill of Clifford J. Mulder Retirement Investment Planning of Raymond James, and all of our guest speakers, Tracy Morton, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Kalamazoo chapter, Christina Schlitt and Fran Eckenrode of the League of Women Voters of Michigan, Alejandro Castillo, YWCA USA, Stacy Caudill of Raymond James, and last but certainly not least, our keynote speaker, Jessica Baird. Thank you all so much. Without these individuals, without our hosts and our sponsors, we would not have been able to make and share their powerful voices with you tonight. As we close the celebration, highlighting 100 years of voting rights for women, we must remember that voting was not a privilege afforded to Sojourn. Close the celebration, highlighting 100 years of voting rights for women. We must remember that voting was not a privilege. And women still do not have the opportunity to vote. At YWCA Kalamazoo, eliminating racism and empowering women is at the heart of everything that we do. We believe that women, Indigenous women, Black women, and women of color must be represented and supported in our electoral process to ensure that voices of all women are heard. Each of us have a role to play in ending voter suppression and amplifying the policies and experiences of women leaders across the United States. Please remember to vote on November 3rd, send in your absentee ballot, and encourage everyone to vote. Throughout this pandemic, many of us have rallied and shouted that Black lives matter. Let's make sure that action is reflected in our civic duties. Thank you all so very much, and thank you to the YWCA staff. You are amazing and you all rock. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for that wonderful thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica, for everything. Your speech was very moving. Everyone knows that I am a grassroots organizer at heart, so I was in the background. Yes, yes, yes. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Demetrius Wilberton, and I am the Director of Mission Impact here at YWCA. It has been my pleasure to assist with planning and programming the Women's Equality Day of 2020 alongside our long partnership with the League of Women Voters, Kalamazoo area. I am here to close this out. Today, Jessica Bird said, you know, you vote with your heart. You vote with the people that you care about, and you vote for the people that you want to protect. And I ask that as we begin to move forward into this general election, that we look in and we reflect into our hearts on where we want to be and how we want to show up as a country and as a community on our ballots in November. Thank you so much for joining us in celebrating the 100th anniversary where women received the right to vote and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. I hope each of you are healthy and safe throughout the rest of this year. Thank you so much.
Yep, it's done.
DJ Chuck, hit the beat. Hit the beat.
Yeah, let's go, baby. Oh yeah, it's Big Gucci, baby. Big Woman MC. Hey, check this out. I got this new line dance hustle, you dig? This going out to all my MCs all across the world. We don't do this one here to fight the show.
Hey! All right, y'all. We going to the yard party. Y'all got a chance to watch the thing online. We out here on Patterson Street. Y'all welcome to come down and join us. We about to get it. Tiff about to get it, y'all. Hey!
How about head knock kick? Step to your right now, slide. Turn to your left.
We got some goodies. We're on live.